Hello everyone, welcome to Epyx911's channel, the Elitist gaming section of my channel to be exact. What's an elitist gamer? I'm an elitist gamer, or at least I was an elitist gamer. Let me give you a bit of history, how this all started. I was born in 1972, so I kind of hit the perfect golden age of the arcade machine. In fact, I remember my first arcade machine. But before I get to that, what was my first gaming experience? Well, it would have been about 1978. I would have been 6 years old. And it was on one of those 10-in-1 game unit consoles. This was pre-Atari 2600, pre-Odyssey 2, pre-Intellivision. This thing was probably about the size of an Atari 2600, had 10 games in it, except each of the 10 games pretty much looked like the other games. You had tennis, hockey, bowling, pong, and really that's all they were, pong variants. You had a couple paddles on the screen, and a ball that go back and forth, with some basic sound effects. But holy shit was I hooked. Hooked through the nards and back. It was fucking awesome. Absolutely awesome. And it also started a pretty sad chapter in my life of hanging out with friends who had consoles, spending more time on the console than with the friends at times. But what can you do when you're an addict? So that was my first run-in with video games. Oh, but the revelation was to come. 1979, 1980. I would have been in grade 3 at the time. 1980, I was in grade 3. Walking home from school, which was about a 5K walk at the time. And I remember going past a high school. It was North Surrey Senior Secondary High School. I lived in Surrey, British Columbia at the time. And I remember hearing these really cool electronic noises coming from inside. Like blips and bleeps, like that 10-in-1 console unit, but even more futuristic sounding. And damn was I curious. Problem is, I was a 3-year-old grade 3 rugrat angle biter, and there were big teenagers. And when you're in grade 3, teenagers may as well be adults, because they were old and intimidating. And they happened to be smoking in front of the door that led into this place. So all I could do was hear the sounds and walk home. I think it might have been about a week or two of walking past this place, and this place was called the Three Bears Drive-In. Still remember the name, Three Bears Drive-In restaurant. And one day I got the courage to go inside because no teenagers were hanging around the front door. My God, as I stepped through that door, it was like, and I use the word revelation, and I don't use that lightly. It was revelation. It was spiritual enlightenment. It was nirvana. It was the changing of my life, literally. If I had to put my thumb on one moment in time that turned me into the gamer I was, even more than the 10-in-1, it was walking into that arcade for the first time. And I say arcade, they had maybe 12 machines in there. Hardly qualify for an arcade at the time, but still remember walking in through that front door, and I turned left, and the first machine that I saw was Battlezone. And if you guys don't know Battlezone, look it up on Google right now, but Battlezone was a walk up to it machine with a periscope, 3D vector graphics, which were cutting edge for the time, and you basically fought other tanks and various enemies that scuttled around the view scope. But for me, in grade 3, they might as well have pulled the Star Wars universe around me. That's how freaking awesome it was. And being a Star Wars geek and a Star Wars fan, it changed my life. After that, my new obsession was getting money to play the video games, because they were a quarter at the time. And a quarter in the 1970s, 1980 wasn't easy to come by for a kid my age. But I was pretty ingenious. And where there was a will, there was a way. And the high school was right there, and I remember Pop cans at the time, soda cans for any Americans, were worth 5 cents. So I would collect the pop cans from the garbage. Put it this way. All pride went out the door once I saw Battlezone and Galaxian and these other games that were in there. All pride went out the window and it became entrepreneur mode. All right? I didn't even hesitate to climb into those big garbage bins to look for the pop cans. It was about 2 weeks of that, and janitor saw me, made an arrangement, and he kept the bags from the cafeteria on the side for me. So I'd meet him every Friday and I'd get, now keep in mind this was 1980, and he would probably give me about $6, $7 in pop cans. Now, for a kid my age, $7 in 1980 was a lot. That was 28 arcade games, or a few comics, you know, 10 arcade games, a couple of comics, pop, chocolate bars. Fucking awesome. So I remember that first weekend, I got the pop cans. I hustled. They wouldn't take them at the Three Bears Drive-In, so I had to go far away, cash them in, go back on my BMX bike, and plug them into Battlezone. And unless you've been there in that time, you can't relate to the feeling of an arcade. It's not comparable to anything. It's not comparable to sitting in front of your Xbox and being anonymous 378 of 5 billion people around the planet. It's visceral. It's in your fucking face. It's lights. It's noise. It's social. It was multiplayer gaming for the time. And it was fucking amazing. And honestly, I probably plugged enough quarters over the next couple of years that we lived there, I could have bought a couple of the arcade machines. But suffice it to say, the fix was in, and I was hooked. Next up came the Atari 2600. And I had a buddy of mine who was a friend, a good friend, but I remember sleeping over at his house and waking up once everybody had gone to sleep and junking on his Atari 2600 until the wee hours of the morning. Like, we're talking 7 hours, 6 hours straight of playing Barnstormer, Yar's Revenge, Asteroids, Pac-Man, which is probably the world's crappiest translation of Pac-Man to ever grace a console. But when it was all you had, my God, was it good. Then it was a couple of years saving up money in a paper route to get my Commodore 64. And that really set me on the way to being the elitist gamer. Because I stopped having time for consoles. My little brother had a SNES, and sure, I played the odd game of Zelda and Mario Brothers, but everything was with the nose up in the air because I had a Commodore 64, and then an Amiga, and the graphics were better. And what the hell was a console when you could play Ultima 5 and Ultima 6? And these massive epic RPGs like Might and Magic 2 and Might and Magic 3, and I realized there's a Might and Magic 2 on the Genesis, but the range of RPGs that I had available, which became another love affair, was unmatched on a console at the time because they were meatier and deeper than any JRPG. So I became a snob, I became an elitist. And a good buddy of mine who I've been friends with since grade 4 went on to get a PlayStation and told me all about Final Fantasy VII and Final Fantasy VI on his SNES. I didn't listen because I was playing Ultima Underworld and I was playing Ultima 7, The Black Gate, and Baldur's Gate eventually, and I let the whole console thing slip me by. And this is the same kid that when I was 12 years old, I swore I'd watch cartoons forever. And that stopped too when I became the elitist gamer. Finally, 2006, things changed. After years of my friend hassling me, give consoles a try, watch anime, I gave in. I tried. What opened the floodgates for me? Final Fantasy XII. I know it's not everybody's favorite, but Final Fantasy XII for me was the perfect entry into JRPGs. I'll talk about why in the next video.